Welcome to the GrayHawk DJC podcast. In today's podcast, we talk with Crystal Vaitkus, owner and founder of Crystal Massages in Frisco, Texas. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Hey, Crystal, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm finally glad we got our schedules to match.
I know.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have you done a podcast before?
I think so. I've done like I have. I'm like trying to think about it on the way over here. I'm like, I've done like interviews and online written stuff, but
okay, so you should be an old pro at this.
Yeah,
it's harmless.
such a pro.
Yep.
Such a pro.
So we start off with, tell us about yourself, where you're from, some background information, let the folks get to know you, and then we'll go on with the podcast.
Okay.
Yep. Whenever you're ready.
Oh, so what do you want to know?
Where are you from? Yep.
I'm originally from Long Beach, California.
Okay.
Grew up in West Covina until in my 20s, and then had a stint in Orange County, and then basically was in Long Beach, California for the last 15 years before I moved to Texas 5 years ago.
Okay. And so take us through the process of being in California and what made you come to Texas. Yeah.
That's such a fun story.
Yeah.
I was in a relationship.
Okay.
And it was already pretty bad. And he moved me out here, and it lasted a month.
Okay.
And then I left the relationship, and I decided to sort of make it my own story.
How long were you in a relationship before you came out?
2.5 years.
Okay, so it was great in California. No? Okay, all right, never mind.
Wherever you go, there you are.
All right.
And I think, sorry, like my eyes watering all of a sudden. I think I was just so busy because it's Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
There's no work-life balance. I was like a slave to just floating above.
Okay.
And not to get too much into negative connotation with that relationship, but it wasn't a healthy relationship, but I also wasn't in a healthy place. Mm-hmm. And then we moved here, and wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
And people fall short, and I just realized, like, the only way this is going to stop is if I remove myself from the situation. So I left after a month, and then...
Did he come for his job?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were you doing out in California?
Massage.
Okay.
I worked for a gym called Equinox, and was a manager at their spa. And I was able to get a transfer over here, but my license hadn't transferred.
Okay.
So they were lucky. They were nice enough to like take me in and like pay me an hourly wage until my license transferred. And it was just the weight of the breakup. It was right at the beginning of the holidays. Like, I'm burning through my savings, and I was just like, oh my God. I was basically like losing my mind.
So how did you get into massage then?
Oh,
yeah.
I hurt my back.
Okay.
And I was in the restaurant business for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I had bent over to pick up, because I was working a Sunday brunch at a restaurant that I was working at, and I bent over to pick up like that one bottle of champagne that would change my life forever, right? And I couldn't stand back up. And I was like, oh my God. So, and I was managing at the time, and I went into my office, and I sat there, and I was like, I was in so much pain, I felt like I was nauseous. And about an hour later, like, I'm icing it, and I'm like trying to take Advil, and it just was not, the pain was not subsiding. And I was like, I gotta go to like an urgent care or something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like looking up, and I'm literally like a hunched out old lady, barely getting in my car. And I went to urgent care, and they saw me walking in. I'm like, I don't know, I did something. So, so they shot me up with a steroid shot, and then they did some x-rays. They're like, no, nothing's broken. Sent me up with a steroid shot, which helps with inflammation, and sent me home with pain meds. I went home, I took the pain meds. I was talking to somebody, I think it was like cortisone. I don't know, I don't take pain meds. But whatever the pain med that they gave me actually causes constipation.
Okay.
So I've got lower back pain that seized up, and now I've got constipation adding to the discomfort, and I could not get out of bed. 4 days later, I'm like, something's got to give. And I remember a girlfriend of mine, she's like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm still in bed. And she's like, I can't believe it. Like, you're so healthy. You work out all the time. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. She goes, you should get some acupuncture. And I was like, what? What is that? She's like, acupuncture, or maybe a chiropractic adjustment. And I'm like, the thought of getting my spine twisted by a chiropractor right now, oh my God, no. Like, stick needles in my foot. No, it's not happening. But then I started thinking about it, and I was like, maybe I should just kind of look it up just to see. And so I found this, they were called Sports Chiropractic something in Long Beach. I went in there, like all hunched over 4 days later. And I'm like, I hurt my back. They took some x-rays. Okay, no burn this. This is what you got. You know, muscle seized up, blah, blah, blah. You're severely dehydrated. And I was like, okay. They stuck me under the table, did some acupuncture. Right away, I started feeling like he stuck a needle between my eyebrows and like in the insides of my palms and the insides of my ankles. And I'm like, that's not where the pain is. And he was just like this Asian guy, like, just shut up. Oh, okay. And I sat around there in the heat lamp for 20 minutes with these needles that were not where the pain was manifesting. But there was this like chart of an anatomy, like a visual chart of a person, and it was like all these little points, and I was just like mesmerized. And then I started thinking, like, have you ever like maybe scratched something or kind of like got poked or something and it hurt somewhere else? Like, that's where I thought, like, wait a minute, that's kind of fascinating. And so I literally was just obsessed with that wall chart. And then he comes in and he takes the needles out, and then they did cupping and isolated massage just really into that muscle just to loosen it up. And then I got an adjustment. Mm-hmm. I had to go back 3 times consecutively in 1 week. Okay. And by literally the first session when I walked out, I was like, I can stand up a little straighter. Wow, this is a miracle. And by the 3rd session, it was like nothing happened. And I was so awestrucken that like these people could fix me with the knowledge that they have of their anatomy and with their hands. That's fascinating. Still wouldn't click. About a week later, I run into an old girlfriend. I'm skipping ahead. About a week later, I'm hanging out with a friend of mine who owned a barbershop in West Hollywood, and we were talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm just kind of stuck. I'm just like, I've been successful at the things that I'm doing, and I have this barbershop, and I'm just like, I'm just bored. And he goes, and I paid $5,000 for this financial life coach to basically give me an online questionnaire of 150 questions. What a joke. And I'm like, would you mind emailing that to me? Maybe and he's like, yeah, if you can get some use out of it. And it was basically like, you just ask these questions and, whatever, you go on their website or whatever. It took me probably like 2 or 3 weeks to like finalize it because I just didn't give it that much thought. And then it spit out like job ideas. Mm-hmm. I can't remember all of them. I remember one of them was nursing. I'm like, no. And whatever. And then it was like massage therapy. And I was like, yeah, like that's what I got. And that, wow. And then literally probably a couple days after that, I'm on the boardwalk of Long Beach, probably having a Sunday funny, drinking with my friends. And I run into an old girlfriend that I used to work with. Oh my God, how have you been? She's like, oh, I'm doing great. I was like, what are you up to now? She's like, oh, I'm a massage therapist. I'm like, man.
The universe is talking to you.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, man, can I tell you my story? And I kind of briefed on it. And all she had to say was, it's really good money. And I'm like, no, I don't. That was the furthest thing removed from my mind. The fact that you can like get people out of pain, because I was miserable. Mm-hmm. I was missing out on work, my attention span, my temper, like everything. I felt like absolute crap. And she was like, it's really good money. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, I can't have this conversation with her. Like, and she was working at a casino, not downgrading that. But I was just like, I was thinking on a larger scale, like, wow, if you can help people with your hands and your knowledge. And I've always said, pain changes your mood and not in a good way. Right. So if I could like utilize that to like help people get out of pain, like how much possibly happier this world could be if that. And so beside all that, I was like, so where'd you go to massage school? And she told me, and that was maybe Sunday. And then Monday I called the massage school, and here we are 10 years later. So how long is the school then to get? Well, the school, somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like, I want to say in all I was kind of aggressive because I was really wow, I love this. Like the anatomy, like I was the nerd sitting in the front of the class. I know. And the teachers were like, Crystal, we know you know. Let's okay. Which is the first time ever in my life. And so I was just so fascinated by the anatomy and the structure of it. I want to say I was probably interning in as little as like 6 months.
Okay.
Where I was actually physically working on people.
So you go to school and then you
have to have
trade.
so many hours
Okay.
in the excuse me, my throat's dry.
So is there a certification process too with the state or something? So what's that like for people that are trying to
hold that thought?
All right.
So now I'm in my internship, right? My very first day, my very first lady that's on my table.
Okay. Never touched a person before like this, right?
Well, students.
Right.
But this is a stranger, which I'm comfortable with, right? And she gets on my table and she was this older lady and her hygiene wasn't quite up to par. Sure. And at the internship, we had to provide our own sheets. Let's just say I threw those sheets away. Okay. I was like, I'm not. And then all of a sudden I was like, I can't. Like I can't do this. I can't, I started visualizing myself and just like stuck in a spa, working on people like no. And so I kind of phased out. And one of my instructors emailed me and he's like, what happened? And I told him, and he's like, no. Come sit into one of my sports massage classes, and that's where I see you. That's what I see. That's like when I see you doing something like that. And I was like, okay. So I went in and sat into one of his sports massage classes, and I was actually massaging on one of the Kings hockey players. And I was like, oh, yes, this makes sense. And it was... I don't remember his name, but it was right when they finally won the Stanley Cup. Okay, yep. So the first time in 20 or whatever. Not like I'm a big hockey player or fan or whatever, but I just like the sports aspect of it because I've always worked out and I've always really been mindful of my health and wellness and all that stuff. So it was like, oh, this makes way more sense. And he's like, see? And so I was hooked, way more hooked after that. But anyways.
So after that, is that Equinox your first job with the massage?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it's funny because I went to go get some transcripts and I was working with a chiropractor and she was really nice and they were really accommodating considering it was my first job, but I just didn't feel like there was enough growth potential. Okay. And so I had to go back to my school to get some transcripts. I forget for what, but it's right down the street from Equinox, South Bay. And I was like, I wonder if they have a spa on there where they give massages, whatever. And so I kind of stopped in and I was like looking around. I'm like, oh my God, they do. And so I was like, hey, I want to fill out an application to, be a massage therapist. And they're like, oh yeah. And then sat down and filling out. And then the girl comes back and she's like, the girl that's in charge of hiring, she could actually interview if you don't mind waiting a couple of minutes. She's actually finishing up with this or was going into a session or whatever. If you want to come back, whatever. I can't remember what the story was. And I was like, all right. So then I'm just kind of filling out the application and I may have even came back. I don't remember, but I remember being in the, they have a gift shop where they sell gym attire, bottled waters, whatever, towels. And I had some time and I went in there and I was kind of looking around and I remember I was looking at this bag and it was so overpriced. I was so poor at the time. I was like, wow, that's so expensive. And the shelf fell on my head. Okay. Totally fell on my head, crashed down on my head. And I was like, oh my God. And the girl comes running around. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And then I felt drip. So it cut me open. And then I felt really dizzy. And I was like, oh my God. And they're like, come here, sit down. I was like, okay. And so I sat down and the general manager comes over. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And I've got this ice compass on my forehead and they're like, okay, fill out a waiver or whatever, emergency form, emergency contact. And I was like I started but then it, everything sort of registered. And they're like, did you still want to do the practical? Practical is massaging on the person. I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. Just give me a Band-Aid. So they bandaged up my head and I went in. I remember I was massaging the manager and I was like, oh my God, my head is pounding right now. And I was like, I may have to cut this short because my head's starting to really hurt. She's like, oh my God. I'm like, no, it's fine. And they hired me on the spot. And it was kind of like a joke, like you guys only hired me so I wouldn't sue.
Right. But
I was with the company for a couple of years and very successful, and it was a great company, and they were so good to me, and so.
Okay, so that happens, and now you're in Dallas. So what happens in Dallas now?
So, come here with the ex-boyfriend, lasts a month, and I'm trying to work at Equinox, but I can't legally do sessions. They're trying to compensate me, but I'm like burning through my savings, and I was just like,
and you knew no one here, right?
Nobody.
So you're just here by yourself now.
But, absolutely. And so finally I just kind of was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need to go home. I need to go home and just, I don't know what I'm doing. But I know I just can't be here right now. And so packed up my little Fiat I literally only had the clothes on my back of my dog, and had enough money just to get back home and pay a friend back home $600 for 1 month rent. I had no furniture, anything. He's like, don't worry, I have an air mattress. I was like, okay, this is literally this time 5 years ago in 2017. Mm-hmm. It was an air mattress with a hole in it. Every morning I woke up and it was like, oh my God.
So you're back in California.
So now I'm back in California, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'll go back to Equinox and just recap that life. But now my California license expired. And it's just like.
But your Texas one took on?
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay, all right.
So now I'm sitting there. I'm like, I got no license in Texas. California is now expired. I reapplied for that. In the meantime, I still had some clients that I sort of reached out to. And I figured, I'll just go to homes and whatnot like I did in the past. But the traffic was so bad. So bad.
No, not in Southern California.
Oh my God. So bad. Like I would literally, if I had to travel 10 miles, I would have to give a cushion of at least 2 or 3 hours between. Because I remember I had a client in Huntington Beach and a client in Marina Del Rey. Marina Del Rey was 3 p.m. And then I was like, okay, so if she's 3 p.m. and she wants a 90 minutes, so it's 3, 4, 4:30, I'm not going to be able to get to Huntington Beach probably till like 7:30, 8. Like, how bad is that, right? But I did it because I needed money. And that's when I finally just randomly one day called Texas Health Department. And I was like, can I just have my money back? And they're like, well, we don't do that. I'm like, yeah, but I paid for a massage, or I paid for a license that you've never given me, and it's 6 months, and I don't even live in Texas anymore. And she's like, well, I'm looking at the notes, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it doesn't matter. Like, everything you've asked for, I've over-delivered. And every time I've called and you said that I was missing one thing, I'd always follow and end the conversation with, that's all you need. Are you sure? Can you double check? And she's like, okay, I'm going to put you on a brief hold. I'm like, I'm used to that. She gets back on the phone. Well, the lady that's in charge of out-of-state transfers is on vacation. And you're at a point where you're just like, yeah, sure, okay. Do you have a pen and paper? And I'm thinking she's just going to give me like an 800 number or her contact, whatever. She'll be back in 2 weeks. Because it was just constantly, like just that hamster wheel. And she's like, okay, go ahead. Are you ready? And I said, yeah. And she goes, T, a bunch of numbers. And I'm like, she's like, I'm just going to go ahead and give you your massage license. I'm like, what? You're just going to go ahead and give it to me? And I don't think I've played the story up enough to know, like, to really amplify all the bullshit that I went through before that, when she's just going to give it to me. And I was like, okay, you're just going to give it to me. I appreciate you. Thank you. And I remember, like, I was in the kitchen and I'm like up against the counter cupboards, and I just like sank down. And I was sitting there with the paper and the pen, and I'm like, shit, now what? Now what? Do I go back to Texas? I don't want to be in California. definitely no, I don't want to be in Well, I just basically answered my own question. I'm going back to Texas. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going back to Texas. I'd only been in California for about 3 weeks at the time. Mm-hmm. And my friends that I was living with at the time, they were like, when they got home from work, I was like, I finally got my license in Texas, so I'm going to go back. And they're like, you just came from there. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back. You're crazy. I'm like, I know, and you guys know that. Yeah, I'm going back. Okay. And I have a birthday in a couple weeks, so I was like, I'll hang out, and then I'll leave after my birthday. And so I had a Sunday fun day, birthday or whatever, and I hit before that, so now here's a couple weeks, right? I have 3 weeks up until my birthday, and I was like, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply for a shit ton of jobs in Texas now that I have my license, now that I can put your license number, I can fill that shit in and be legit. Mm-hmm. So I went on every job and every place that was hiring, filled out an application with my massage license finally in Texas, and found some guy off Craigslist, semi-furnished room. It was like literally a day bed, $300, like, I'll take it. Like, I'm going to, and I just set up all these interviews. There was 13 interviews, and I told him, I said, and I bought a round trip plane ticket, and I said, I'm going to be coming through, and I'll figure it out, and let's meet in this time frame. Got the dirtiest, cheapest hotel, and I made it work. Rented a car, and I got there and I set up all the job interviews, met with him, gave him 2 months. So I gave him $600. This is 2 months worth of rent, and did all the interviews. And I came back and I got a job interview for every interview that I went on. And I picked out the best one, and I contacted the owner and I said, okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to be driving back, blah, blah, blah. I can start April 1st. And he goes, okay, great. So after my birthday, March 29th, I left at 6 o'clock in the morning. Me, my clothes, and my dog in my Fiat. And I said, I'm not stopping till I get to Texas. Left at 6 o'clock in the morning. I got to Texas at 11:45 p.m. It was brutal. I was like, I could never do that again. But apparently, like, I was just on a mission. I get to a hotel, like I had, a hotel reservation, you didn't have to pay or whatever. I get there, my card was declined. I have no money in the bank, but my card was declined because it was used so many times in so many states that the bank was like, this is fraud. And I was just getting gas and snacks along the way, right? And by the time I got to like my final destination where I could sleep, it was denied. I was like, what? I had to call the bank. It's me. I'm moving back to Texas. And they're like, okay. So they, whatever, let it go. And I remember it was just the creepiest hotel. It was so bad. And I remember taking pictures of this hotel, and I was like, I can't wait to look back and reflect on this. My humblest of beginnings.
What part of town was it? Do you remember?
El Paso.
Oh, okay.
Is any of it nice? No offense.
I've never been to El Paso.
I'm never going back. I was literally there for 6 hours, just enough to rest my head. And again, I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Got the dog in the car, took a shower, got the dog in the car. I don't even think we slept on the bed. It was so gross. Got the dog in the car and had 9 hours to go to reach my final destination in McKinney, mm-hmm. where I paid that guy,
right.
2 months rent. And got there at, 8 o'clock at night or something, and took a hot shower, got up the next morning, went to work. And I was with this spa, if you will, for a little over a month. Mm-hmm. I'm not a spa person. When they introduced the dark chocolate massage, I was like, I'm out. Like, we had to do some training on, we had to basically melt these like 1 pound dark chocolate Hershey bars and like lather them all over. And I like did this training. I'm like, no. Oh no. Yeah. No.
Sounds a little fishy. Yeah.
No. And went and applied for a gym. I didn't go back to Equinox just because I didn't want to do the drive. Because the only Equinox at the time was in Preston Hollow, and I was living in McKinney.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, Lifetime Fitness. And so I applied there, and I got hired there. And I worked there for 6 months. The worst job ever. That was the most challenging employer I've ever had in my life. And I got fired.
Okay. So what are you doing after you get fired? What are you thinking?
When I got fired, I walked out. Well, it had been kind of like, this has got to stop the way you're treating your employees. This isn't cool. This nickel and diming out of your paycheck, like, it's not cool. You don't have explanation for shop fees, miscellaneous fees. I was on, oh God, hopefully they don't sue me. I was on the phone with corporate and, you know, hey Bob, let's put it on a grander scale. You got a family. He's all, it's irrelevant. I'm going to make it relevant. If someone's taking little chunks out of your paycheck, and if you do an overall, you know, grand scheme of it, for me, I'm just the little guy, but how many employees do you have? Where is that money going to? Until you can give me a definite answer and a breakdown, I don't care if it's $1. Don't take it out of my paycheck. I got fired the next day.
Right.
And they allowed me to work the 9-hour shift, all the clients I worked with. And then when I was finishing up, the manager comes in and she's like, oh, I forget the general manager's name. She's like, oh, he'd like to see you. I'm like, for what? Oh, no, he'd just like to see you. I'm like, oh my God. And I just knew because the conversation had happened the day before. I walked in there and I sat down. He's like, yeah, it's just not a good fit. I'm like, based on what? Based on what? Well, it's just, you know, we just don't see eye to eye. I'm like, because you guys are fucking crooks. Fine. This is fine. And I was like, my ego was crushed because I'm like, oh my God, I just got fired. I'm like 45 and I got fired from a job, and a shitty job at that. And I'm walking out. They like walk me to my room, and the guy made a comment like, those aren't your oils. I'm all, listen, there's nothing of this establishment that I want to take with me. Trust me, I ain't gonna steal anything from you. And so I walked out, and I'm walking my little Fiat like, I can't believe I got fired. And I'm sitting in my car, and I'm like, I look in the rearview mirror, and I'm like, I looked at my eyes, and I'm like, I am never applying for another job application again.
So that was it. That was the moment.
That was it.
Okay.
And then I drove home, and it was like this push-pull of emotions. Like, I feel like shit, but empowered. I can't believe, like, my ego's bruised, but fuck them. You know, like, they were burning me, you know, at both ends anyways. And I mean, I literally, like, several weeks leading up to this, I'm like dragging my heels going into that gym. Like, I cannot stand this job. They're taking everything that I was passionate about, what I do, away from me. So in a sense, blessing in disguise, but a lot of times we don't know that, right?
Right.
And so I got home and I was like, nope. No, I'm not going to panic. I'm still poor, but whatever. I'm not filling out a job application. I had already started the buildings of my business. Like, I'd already had my website. I was already toying around with it. I was already like, you know, I had enough money to make 2 t-shirts, and I had $100. My girlfriend built me a website. I got some business cards. So I already had that stuff going on.
Okay,
and I
was you were thinking about it already.
Well, I was already kind of doing it while I was working at the gym.
Okay.
Like, you know, I was kind of like, you know, people at the gym are like, oh my God, you're so amazing, this and that, da, da, da. If you ever go anywhere, and I'm like, okay, keep this on the down low, but here's my business card. If I'm not here, you know where to find me, whatever. And I was already going to locations. Like, I went to this, I remember I found the richest neighborhood in Dallas, and I looked up like local gyms and like personal trainers, and I would go and like talk to them and say like, hey, this is the shit. Like, this is what I do. This is my background. Like, you know, but I was still committed to Lifetime Fitness.
Sure.
Like, just seeing if I can leverage that. But like you were saying, like, we still have our day job.
Right.
Because I was so emotionally connected to having that day job security.
Right.
That I was just putting my feelers out there, right? Mm-hmm. Just kind of meeting people, just kind of doing it. If it came, oh, great, that was added additional money. And so when I got fired, I was like, all right, we're going back to that method. So I literally walked around. I only wore my Crystal Massages t-shirts. I had a magnet on the side of my little Fiat, like advertising my business. Don't ever have your actual cell number connected to your business because a lot of information could be found by that.
Sure.
I pulled up to a light and all of a sudden I get a text message from a guy at a stoplight right next to me asking me to send him photos. And I'm like, what? And he's like, do you have any photos of you? And I'm like, who the fuck is this? And he's like, I'm at the stoplight next to you. I'm all, those magnets came off. Those magnets were on my car door for like 2 days. And then that happened. I was like, oh no. So I didn't have the money to get like a business line, but the magnets at least came off. Right. So, that was the start of the hustle, and I didn't have any money and I did nothing but house calls, and it was all word of mouth. And I was like really, really cheap at the time, but I was hungry.
Okay.
And dedicated. And how I built my business was, and I remember telling myself, like, the only way I'm going to stay ahead of the game and beat my competition is knowledge. So Friday nights, Saturday nights, every holiday, New Year's, all the big holidays, while everybody was out partying and playing and enjoying themselves, my head was in books.
Right.
And any little extra money that I had, I continued to expand my knowledge. And when you have that, people respect that. And I just kept with it. But I loved what I did. And I loved helping people. And to me, my high was when I offered up any sort of knowledge and the client utilized whatever and it worked, and like their whole life would change. Like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And then that would build on another referral and another referral. And I always told my clients, like, whatever I don't know, I'm going to obsess over. Mm-hmm. So don't you worry, you know, like, because I think Western medicine comes in handy if you're in like a major car wreck or something like that. But I think overall health really resides in us. In my website, it's even be proactive, not reactive.
Right,
but
right.
I'm kind of jumping all over the place. But yeah, I'm just passionate about it. And
so you didn't put any money down. You just
no, I had no money.
You're just hustling.
Literally,
and through word of mouth, people are finding you.
When
right?
I drove back here to Texas, I think I had $600 in my bank account.
All right.
I had nothing.
So when was your first real spend on your business? Like, how did that happen?
It still hasn't happened.
Okay. But you have a place now, though, right? You have a location, employees, or?
I do have one. So my first location, I remember it was $500 a month. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to? And I was like, stop. Because I 6 months prior to that, I had just got my own apartment because I'd been renting rooms, and that was just an absolute nightmare. And finally was making enough money to afford $1,000 a month for my own apartment. And I remember moving into it, and I was like, oh my God, I have arrived. It was a 750 square foot apartment. It was $1,000, and it was like a 30-minute drive from everywhere. It was so far away, but I was like, oh my God. And I was only on, so I moved back April 1st, and I got that apartment November 2018. So not much time had went from sleeping on an air mattress with a hole in it to actually getting my own apartment. So that was a really proud moment for me. And the apartment was like brand new, and I was just like, wow, okay. So that was in November 2018. I'm still hustling on my house calls and still trying to make everything work. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just waking up every day and just going with it, right? And then was kind of working out of a chiropractor's office, and I don't want to talk bad about him or talk down on him, but I'm such a hustler, and I was trying to go, okay, in the beginning, like, it made sense for you to take half, but these are now my clients, and these are my clients that I've drawn in. Can we negotiate another deal? Can I rent out the room versus, and he wouldn't budge. So I was like, okay, and so I just kind of by accident found a location, and okay, now I'm jumping ahead. All out of my just journey, I was just like, oh my God, this is so crazy. This is like my mind, I'm getting anxiety, and I don't do meds or anything like that. So I just kind of like remember like laying down on my bed, just like feeling very overwhelmed and very like, this is a lot for me to handle in such a short amount of time. I'm kind of like, what direction do I go in next? I'm like, let me just sit on it, because there's something that I need that's going to help me sort of get it together. And I don't have any money to hire anybody to help me get it together. And all of a sudden this like, you should do yoga, like popped up in my head. And I'm like, I should probably do yoga. Okay. Who said that? And I just kind of looked online, and there was a yoga studio, and I went and it was $18 for the week. And I went, and I was like, the meditation, the calming, the breath work, like really just kind of got me centered again, so I could have that energy to go back into the world and do, this crazy life that I'm living. Signed up to yoga, and next thing you know, all the answers are coming. So now I'm at this chiropractor's office, and I'm not happy, and I'm like, now I know how to meditate, now I know how to calm my mind, and now I know how to sit and understand the awareness of the value and how important meditation is. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home and meditate on it. Or some people like to say pray. So I went home, and I was just like, okay, I need to move on from working out of this chiropractor's office. House calls are just taking too much toll on me, my energy, my car, like everything else. And, I kind of need another outlet or just some answers. And then all of a sudden, one of my clients randomly was like, hey, I went to this spiritual awareness center. You want to meet for lunch? The whole time I was there, I thought about you. And I was like, okay. So I went and met her for lunch, and she's like, it's not really a church. They don't talk about like, Jesus or God. There's not crosses everywhere. Not that I'm against any of that. And I was just like, where are you getting at? And she goes, I don't know. There's something about it just made me feel like I really needed to tell you about it. And I'm like, well, I did just kind of meditate. Who knows? Okay. And so she gave me the information, and I actually went to it was a Agape spiritual center. And so I ended up going there on a Sunday, and it was cool. Like, all right, whatever, the message was clear, whatever. And when I was walking out, they had a bunch of like pamphlets of learning tools and whatnot. And there was one sort of whatchamacallit, workshop that they were having, and it was called the 5 levels of attachments. And it like totally grabbed my attention. And I started reading it. It was like the 5 level of attachments that human beings have towards anything and everything, whether other human beings, addictions, whatever. And I was like, wow, that's pretty fascinating. And I looked up online, and I like tried to sign up for it, and I couldn't sign up for it. Like, it just wasn't allowing me, but I had the address. And so I went to the place where they were having it, and I saw like their suite number, and I'm like knocking on the door, no one's answering. I'm like, that's so weird. Oh, well. As I'm walking out, there is a poster of a massage therapist, massage therapy, blah, blah, blah. And I was all, oh, they have massage therapists in here. Huh. And then I started piecing it together. I'm like, oh, this might be the answer. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I was like, yes, this is the answer. So then I contacted the front desk, and I was like, do you have any suites available? And I was like nervous, like shit, how much it's going to cost. And she goes, well, the only one I I go, I'm a massage therapist. I don't need much space. And she goes, the only space I have, it's, this area. And she told me the square footage. And she goes, it's available right now. And it's $500 a month. And I was like, okay, I'll take a look at it. And I went and I looked at it. And I was like, I got to do it. I have to do it. So I did it. And I was like, okay. And it's month to month. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I started putting my social media blast, like, okay, this is my room. I'm going to be decorating. And gave the chiropractor my notice or whatever. And was like scared. And I was like, I'm going to be here starting July 3rd or something like that. And it was like by July 1st, my clients were like, is the room ready? I can't move. And I'm like, well, shit. All right. If you don't mind smelling paint, like, screw it. I made my first month's rent in 2 days. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I could do this. And within 6 months, I got double the size. And
is it just you at this point? Or do you have
it's
help?
just me.
Okay.
It's just me.
And then this is the first time you have a fixed cost to your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How you feeling? Is it legit now?
Oh, it's so legit. Now I'm like, what's next? Like, I've paid cash for a car. I've paid cash for real estate. Like, my investment portfolio is already starting to be built, and I do have my first employee. I'm ready to expand, and I'm kind of like, going for it.
All right. How long was that happening before you moved to your location in Frisco?
That's happening now.
Okay.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
The location was in Frisco. The studio.
The studio's in,
Okay.
So the second location that I have now is still in that same building.
Oh, okay.
But now I've even outgrown that. So I'm kind of like, now what's next?
Wow.
What's the next step? Like, storefront. Mm-hmm. So that's actually the next plan, as I'm kind of tweaking some stuff on the website and just kind of like really cleaning up some stuff now that I have time. Mm-hmm. I can actually take days off now. I can take actually multiple days off. I can take a week off now if I want to. Whereas before, like, I don't think I took one day off in 4 years.
Right.
Because you just worked. And I even had a client today wanting a session. And I'm like, before I would be like, okay. But I'm like, no, I need to honor my days off because I do deserve them. I've worked very, very hard for them.
So tell us about Crystal Massages. Like, what do you guys offer and what do you provide? Yeah.
So that is a very fascinating question, and it's ever and ongoing. So originally I started out as sports. Like, I wanted to make sure that people that are actively taking care of their health continue to actively take care of their health, because there's nothing worse, personal experience, than when I hurt myself and I couldn't work out and I couldn't even move, how altered my mood was.
Right.
And for me, I wanted to stray away from spa. I didn't want it to be bougie, fluffy, anything. I wanted people that were actively moving and grooving, that they still could, if you will, painless, and making sure that, because as we get older, shit hurts, right? So just kind of that was my main focus. And that was a great business model, and it was working, and I'm fixing all kinds of shit, and people are like getting MRIs and all this stuff, and oh my God, I didn't have to get surgery, and blah, 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 just little things, because they don't teach us anything about our anatomy, right? And then COVID hit. And now we're all like psychologically fucked up. So I was doing yoga the other day, and the instructor was like, the teacher, she's like, our issues are in our tissues. I'm like, oh my God. After COVID, people changed. And there's a lot of stuff going on in our bodies, because our emotions is connected to our tissues as well. And so that's kind of like your question you were asking me earlier before we started recording, like the 5-year goal. Like, we got anatomy, we got nutrition. I'm working on my nutritional certifications. I'm almost complete with that. And then after that, I'm actually going to start looking into I'm actually going to do hypnotherapy. Okay. And getting into the subconscious brain and cleaning that fucker out. So therefore we can really think from our frontal cortex to be proactive. And if we want to do something, let's do it. Because the subconscious brain, that's keeping us from doing everything.
Right.
And I know personally, because when COVID hit, I was like forced to stop.
Yeah, how was that? How did it affect your business, by the way?
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Amazing good?
It was amazing for me. It was absolutely amazing. I was a babysitter. I was a divorce therapist. So when I say that, when they shut down all the businesses, when they finally allowed businesses to reopen, and everybody was like on unemployment or whatever, and therapists didn't want to work for whatever reason, I was like, strike while the iron's hot. And I got to work. And I got to real work. And I was the only business that was open. So all those clients that were like needing massages and couldn't find anywhere and had their girl or their guy or their person that they'd been going to for years were no longer available, they're now mine. So
They came to you, right?
Yeah, because I was the only business that was available. And I worked way too much in 2020 and 2021. When I first moved here, most of my work was the hustle. And like doing free massages and going to gyms and setting up a table and just putting my hands on clients for like 10 minutes, just having that, gift of gab or whatnot. But this time when I had the studio, it was like legit. I'm doing like 8 sessions a day, like crazy numbers. And, I was telling a girlfriend of mine, July 2021, I did 144 sessions. That's...
How long is each session usually?
Typically an hour.
Wow.
Sometimes, 90. Yeah. I see my day and I'm like, oh my God, I got 3 90s in a row. I'm not getting out of bed till I got to be there.
Sure. Wow.
Because I need that rest.
So with all this experience, if someone's coming to you and going, I'm thinking about starting a business, like, what's your advice for new entrepreneurs, I guess?
Listen to Tony Robbins' podcast.
Okay.
On the drive back from California, the second time, all I did was listen to his podcast, because it's not necessarily him talking. He has all entrepreneurs talking about their start. One of the things he said that stood out with me so much, still to this day, that it's 80% psychological, 20% gift at hand of product. 80% of your success as an entrepreneur is based on your own psychology, your self-esteem, self-awareness, tenacity, drive, ambition, what have you.
Okay.
And I have succeeded and failed so many times. So this was like the most I had ever lost. I mean, to be sleeping on an air mattress with a hole in it, like at 44 or whatever, how old I was like, damn, okay, we got to get on another game plan. I know I wasn't a bad person, and I know, like, it wasn't that I didn't have a stellar work ethic. I just kept focusing on the wrong shit. So I need to get my act together, and I need to do things differently. So there's no such thing as failing. I call it trial and error.
Right.
And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail.
Right.
It's kind of funny to me now. Like when I do shit, I'm like, well, that didn't work. Going on and move on and move on from it. And don't ever beat yourself up. Don't ever have negative self-dialogue. A couple of things that I tell my clients, and this is in relation to everything with your relationships, your diet, exercise, and all that stuff. Start out your day being grateful for what you have. Because if we focus on what we don't have, we just create more, and we're in a lack mindset. So every day I do the 5-minute journal. Amazing book on Amazon. I think it's like $17 or something like that. Write down the 3 things that you're grateful for. Write down the 3 things that would make today amazing. And then follow it up with an affirmation, I am. And when you start having a more positive dialogue about who you are as a person, you put really good energy out there and you attract. It's law of attraction. So if you're putting that good feeling energy out there, you're only going to attract more of it.
Right.
And I'll get clients that come in and they'll bitch about things. I'm like, you can't do that, because when you bitch about something or you're upset about something, you're actually making whatever's hurting you amplified, because it's all cell memory. Let it go. It really doesn't matter. And I said, you know, one of the things, and it's so crazy how this is all parlaying into my life now, is I'd be tripped up on something when I was a kid, like, you know, let's say 16, 25, like really like in my head about it. And then I would say, Crystal, if the doctor told me you only have 24 more hours left to live, or even 30 days left to live, would you be obsessing over it? No, we never would. So why now? Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
If someone said they want to get into massage therapy specifically, what do they need to know?
You better love to learn to do laundry.
Okay.
I've always thought that. I do laundry every day. I was at my yoga studio today, and the girl that owns the studio, she's like, oh my God, you know, I used to do laundry like 3 days a week, and now it's like I have to make it part of my routine. And I looked at her with a blank stare, and she's like, what? I'm all, you know who you're talking to? And she's like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, every day. But you know what? Every sheet bundle is $100. So if I'm shoving 5 bundles of sheets into that washing machine, that's $500 I just made off that. Right, so right. I'm good. I am not going to complain about doing laundry.
Awesome. I
had a laundry girl, but our schedules couldn't, you know, match up, and I could still hire a laundry person. But there's something that's just really kind of nostalgic and humbling of still doing the laundry. It doesn't piss me off. I still kind of want to do it, because it just makes me just those humble beginnings.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think we'll wrap up here.
Sounds good.
I love the energy.
Thank you.
Love the fact that you said you got into this because you wanted to help people.
Oh, so absolutely.
That's, for me, very inspirational. You know, hopefully we'll keep following you. Yeah. And then maybe in a year or so, we'll follow up again and see where you are. And
Would love to.
And see how it goes. But this was great. Thank you so much, Crystal.
Thank you for having me, guys. Sure. I really appreciate it.